Hello, this is Andreas Lindenberg. Welcome to the Power BI Excel in Love session. Today we are going through the links between Excel and Power BI because I'm very much into Excel and I really love the stuff that you can do there, especially with the modern Excel. And on the other hand, Power BI, so with all the data modeling and stuff, and I think it's a really good way to go from Excel to Power BI and back. And I want to go through the options that you have there and find out links. I'm Andreas Lindenberg. I'm from Kiel, from northern Germany. I work as a consultant and I like building tools and doing training with Excel, reporting systems like Power BI and databases. And I always ask myself if there's new things to figure out or if there are easier ways. So this is why I came to Power Query. I came to discover Power Pivot in Excel. And and I'm actually looking forward to come to Belgium in person in October, but today I am here in the internet. I think we have 5 attendees now on the session.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So I will start with a slight introduction, and so more attendees can join the session while I'm starting things. So as you see, my love is Excel, and so I'm doing training with Excel and often talk to people about how and why they should learn things like Power Query. Why should they bother about things like data modeling in Excel and learn all this new stuff? And usually the answer is clear that it's quite powerful and you save a lot of time doing things. And in Excel, you don't have to do everything again, and it's quite more efficient than programming VBA. So I recommend people to use Power Query and data modeling. And on the other hand, they also learn very important concepts and technologies with Power Query and Power Pivot and data modeling that they can use in all the other Microsoft tools like Power BI. So they learn stuff in Excel that will help them a lot. And then later on, they can bring it over to Power BI or to other technologies, but Power BI and Excel, as it turns out, they have a lot in common. In modern Excel, we have several tools for querying data. There are the old tools, like to connect to databases and to import text files. But now with modern Excel, we have Power Query. For storing data for reporting and preparing them for reports, we have a data model in Excel. So we can import, say, 2 or 3 different tables, link them together, and in the end, build a report. But as you all know, Excel, our reports in Excel look like this. They have to be on a grid. You always have these table things. And of course, you have these newer stuff also in Excel, but it's basically always the grid and the worksheets you're working on. In Power BI, we have kind of the same situation. We have the querying data part. We store the data for reporting in the data model. And later on, we build a report that is based on pages. It's not our worksheet and some columns and rows, but it's pages. And we can put all this stuff together in dashboards. So we have kind of the same situation here. And the data model part and actually the querying part that we have in Excel and in Power BI, they share the same technology. So there's lots of things that can be you find both in Excel and in Power BI. For example, if you have a query that you designed for Excel, you can perfectly copy that query into Power BI. Now, let's first start off with some report in Excel that you have and that you want to share. Let's go to my report. Let's first try some things. I've created a report, a travel report with a data model in Excel. Don't care too much about data model. What we first do is we find out how to get stuff from Excel into Power BI. And then after that, we go the route back to take data from Power BI into Excel. So what we see now, we have a report here. It's our travel report from the Gravel Travel Limited. That's my company for the day. And what we can do now is I showed you the report. It looks like this. We just go into our Power BI. I move over my browser window here, and I've created a Gravel Travel Limited app workspace. It has no dashboards, reports, workbooks, datasets whatsoever. And in order to just take our Excel report into Power BI, I use Get Data, select a file, and this is the very basic thing we can do with the Excel files in Power BI. I select local file, not fancy OneDrive and things. Select my report, the travel report, open. Now it asks me if I import data. No, I want to upload my Excel file. I just want to have the report, no data import and stuff. And what we see now, the report will show up as a workbook. I refresh my browser once. Here's my travel report. I can open my travel report. I don't know why it's so slow. Shouldn't be that slow all the time. And what you see, you have Excel Online here. Here's my report and the pivot tables inside my report. And you see on the right-hand side, you have all the pivot table fields and field groups that you can choose from. You can interactively change your report. Do it like this. Yeah. What you cannot do here is you cannot save the changes. It's just a read-only workbook. So if you reload the page, the workbook itself cannot be changed. You can later on replace the file with another report that has looks differently, but this is the very basic option that you have with Power BI and Excel. You can upload Excel files. So let's go back to our slide. So you upload your Excel report as a workbook, and it is always you go through upload, it shows up as a workbook, and then it's stored inside the Power BI service. Then you have just your data there. So you don't see any option to take this data and to do further analysis. And you have just put your Excel file as it looks inside Power BI, but there's no reporting with that data. Now we want to go further and make use of Power BI. So we, instead of just showing your workbook, we import the data. So we import the Excel table data into Power BI. This looks a little differently. The first thing you can do, you do it with Power BI Desktop. You know the obvious way in Power BI Desktop, you just hit Get Data, select your Excel file, and then import the data. With the Power BI service, we also have the Get Data button. You have here, Files. And what I do now, I open up another file that I've prepared. Is this? This contains just a table with columns and dates like this. I close this file, and this is the data I want to put into my Power BI. It still is it's an Excel file saved on my machine. I again take a local file, and now I don't upload the workbook, but I upload the data into Power BI. So it's a very different story. So I changed my folder from reports to data. It's travel bookings actually that I'm uploading, or at least try. And now I don't want to show you in Power BI my Excel worksheet, but I want to import the Excel data. So that's the big difference, import. And now, what happens now? It gives me an error. So it could not find any data formatted as a table. Now we could press this and get some help about what to do, but I just show you in Excel. I just need to change something in my file, so travel bookings. So Power BI is complaining that my data is not a table. And this is quite an important concept that you have in Excel when you work with data. In Excel, I don't know, 97 or basically 2007, I think, they have introduced the concept of a table in Excel. So I'm sorry that we have to wait. Maybe the GoToMeeting that is slowing down this a bit, but shouldn't be too long. There's the data. Now you as a human would say, basically this is a table because you recognize this as a title and these as columns. But Excel doesn't basically recognize it as a table. What you just do is you hit insert, go inside the table, make sure that you don't have any spaces between the columns, insert the table, then it just double check that it's marked correctly. Okay. And then it gives you this formatting. You, of course, have seen that before. You can change the design. I like to have it like this. And that you have a table, you see usually the easiest way to see it is that table tools pop up when you have the table. You could also go through the Home tab. Format as a table is basically the same thing. Now just give it a name, design, table. Let's call this travel bookings. Now we have a worksheet containing like rows and columns. And on that worksheet, you have a table. It's this thing. Now Excel knows the name and stuff about that. And we can save this file again. And now Power BI should not be complaining about our Excel file anymore. So this is what we understand as a table and what Excel or Power BI understands as a table. In Power BI Desktop, we don't have these issues because Power BI Desktop can also read contents from a worksheet that must not be a table. Yeah, importing data, this should take a little while, not too long. And what we have now, you see on the workbooks, we still have the workbook we uploaded before. And on the datasets, we now have travel bookings. And when I open this, you remember the table that I've uploaded before. Yeah, it creates a new report, an empty report. And on the right-hand side, I have all my columns from my Excel file. So it's just super easy. Just dump the values in, and I didn't take care about renaming columns, about column data types and things. What I can do now here, yeah, I have quite limited options. Yeah, I cannot do many things. I cannot, because I've uploaded a local file, I cannot do a refresh of my dataset because it has no, yeah, it has no data model connection. I can upload the data maybe again, but this is just a basic, very basic way to get Excel data in here. And obviously, you can also go through Power BI Desktop, say get data Excel, and import the file like I did before. So data, travel bookings, and you know that. And you may also know that the difference that you see when you open the file, like this. Here you see travel bookings. It's our table again. And here's the worksheet below. It's that called data. So I can choose one of them. I take travel bookings, just hit load without further thinking. And it will create a Power Query, inside my my Excel and inside my Power BI desktop. And then later on, I could publish the data set to the Power BI service. Maybe I should close Notepad to save some RAM or to speed things up. Okay, it's too much, just too much data, maybe 100 kilobytes. Okay, here it's now we have the data, but now we have the chance to edit our data model before we load the data up into our Power BI. So basically, we have loaded our data from our Excel file into the Power BI desktop data model, and we did it directly through get data. Yeah, but we always have to be careful. Our data needs to be stored in a table. Yeah, we could also set the name of the table so we have it right in the Power BI service and not some table 1 or table 5 or whatever. Now let's have some break. Power BI is always talking about OneDrive. It's like all the time. You have seen it when I go back to our workspace. For example, here, I wanted to just to upload an Excel file, local file, but the very prominent option here is the OneDrive as the data store. Let me explain what the difference is, of course, and how you can use it in the context with Excel files. We have here this app workspace, Gravel Travel Limited. This app, when I created the app workspace, it also created the Office 365 group with files, calendar, all the stuff that goes with the group. And I switch over to my OneDrive folder. So you basically, for the app workspace group that you have created, or that gets created in the background, there's a document folder. This is German. I've tried to change everything into English, but I hope you don't mind that this is German now. What you can basically do is if you want to get stuff like Excel files or data into your data model, you could go put it in OneDrive, that's the idea, and then import it into Power BI. So it's not upload the file directly, but go through OneDrive. Let's see what's the difference. And it's really big. So I just remove the data set, I delete it. So now it's gone. The workbook is still there, it's okay, but I just want to care about data now. Now I take the travel bookings file, just drag it into OneDrive. Should not take too long. Here it's the travel bookings. Go back to Power BI, get data, files, OneDrive. And the file will show up here in a second. It's the travel bookings. It's very easy. I can hit connect. Yeah, and connect says that it's not like taking the data and then the link is gone. It takes the file and it creates the link between the file and now when I hit import, the data set that we get. So a data set gets created and now we have our Excel data set. I can hit schedule refresh. And what we see now, we have a OneDrive refresh. So it says OneDrive updates the file hourly. What I can do is, and that's the good thing, you always can go into your, let's call it a data set. Yeah, I open the file in Excel, online, make changes, and once it's changed after an hour, the changes are reflected in your data set here. That's the power of OneDrive. So it is basically that you have your file, you can do changes later on, and they always get reflected here in the travel bookings. And what you still always can do, you can say refresh now, and it gets the data into Power BI. It gets it updated, so you can, in a way, control how the data is updated. Yeah, so you put the file into OneDrive first, and you've seen that I put the file in the group workspace. So it's not my personal OneDrive, it's the group workspace that belonged to my Power BI app workspace. And it does the refresh every hour. When you have a different file, say this is a travel bookings, this is just a data file. Let's take our travel bookings and let's pimp them. So we take our Excel knowledge and open the file and add some data and create some data model from that file. So where's my file? Where is my file? Where is my Excel?
So while you look for your file, now
Yeah,
might be a good time to ask a poll of the audience. I'll let you search for your file. I'll help you out. So people, later on we'll be working with Analyze in Excel, and we're actually wondering, have you worked with the Power BI option Analyze in Excel before? So just let us know. So right now about 50% of the people voted, and it's half and half between yes and I know of it.
Okay.
I'm hoping some more people will vote. Did you find your file?
Yep, I found it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. I'll let this poll run out. I'll give it about 10 more seconds because it seems some more people are voting on it.
Okay.
So all in all, it seems most people actually have, well, not really. Kept changing. Okay, I'll close the poll. So it's between half and half between yes, I've used it before and I know of it, and about 14% of the people have never worked with Analyze Excel before. So they'll have their eyes opened later on when you give a demonstration of that.
Okay.
But up to you again.
Thank you. So what I do now, let's create a data set in here. I go to my data models, to the travel report data model. I just import it. So this is a report that contains a data model. So that report has a data model inside. The travel report data model. If I open it up, here you see travel data, booking date, deposit, return date, season, target group, and destination. So it has basically two tables inside. When you upload an Excel file that has a data model inside, then you can schedule a refresh. So if you have, it's like creating a data set in Power BI Desktop, then Power BI is even able to refresh this data model and refresh the data in the queries that you have uploaded from your Excel file. So these are basically the ways to get data from Excel into Power BI. When it takes long, sometimes it is, I don't know what, I don't lose any files, but it is just taking time. Now I've prepared my data model in Excel, as I've told you. It is, and now I want to take my Power BI desktop. And the next route, if you have prepared stuff in Excel and you want to use it in Power BI, you can import your data model into Power BI desktop. So you go into reports. I take my report with the data model, say start, and now it will take my Excel workbook and import all the contents into Power BI. And the Excel workbook contained data, so I have some data and entered manually into the workbook. And even this data is imported into my data model. So there it is. There it says it's the data. It's called Daten. I just rename it to travel bookings, and I have destinations as a second table below, with all the typical settings. Let's save the file to my. So I just call it travel bookings. Save. Then publish, and I will publish the dataset to my Gravel Travel Limited workspace. There it is, travel bookings. Very good. Now we have the dataset here, and when you want to make use of your data that is now only in the Power BI, you could just create your report by, you know all that, by moving stuff around. take the pucks like this. I switch to reading view, save my report, save, or I just call it travel report. Here's my travel report. And one thing you can do, you can export data from Power BI. You export data, you can choose between summarized data and underlying data. With summarized data, it gives you the data you see here. So it's like it's 4 data points, and underlying data gives you an export, an Excel export of the data that is of all the rows that is behind this. In this case, you might give the user the ability to export data that you don't want them to see. So you risk them to get all the details. The only way, there are 2 ways that you can make them not be able to export that. So when Excel is done, yeah, now you cannot see very much in here, but if you don't want users to go into the details, you can disable export in the tenant settings in the admin portal, or what you can do, you hide all the columns and tables in your data model. So users are not able to export the details, but they can still export summarized data. Yeah, this is one way that you can adjust that a little, but it's not very detailed. It's just the export options that you have here. It's not very much, but then it comes to analyze in Excel. What you have in Power BI in the below your, like in the back of your report, it's the data set running on a SQL Server analysis services. So it's basically a server that hosts your data model. And now with Analyze in Excel, so with the Power BI, you can connect your Excel to your Power BI dataset that you have here in order to do analysis. Let's see how this works. So I hit Analyze in Excel. Now you see that it gives you a file. It is Travel Bookings ODC. ODC means Office Data Connection. This is a small file. It's just 1.4 kilobyte. And for you technical people, I just have opened one ODC file that you just get an idea what happens here. There's a data connection string in here. It's an MS-OLAP connection with the claims token authentication and the data source. So it's basically a web call to an API with some initial catalog. So it's a database, and it's all the IDs that you always also see in the Power BI interface up here, for example, that link to the dataset. So this gets returned to your PC, and now you can open this file. And when you open an ODC file, it will open Excel. In my case, it opens Excel, and so this is Excel is registered for the file type ODC. And now with my PC, you see, you see this, you get this pivot table. Yeah, so I can just go and analyze my data from my travel bookings. Yeah, so I just go back to my data model. I just want to remove 2 things that have sneaked in here. The sum of packs. I don't know what this is. So I changed my data model. So I'm back to the Power BI desktop file. That was the base file that I've created the data model with. obviously something went wrong. I republished the file, and what you can see, I change the data model. I republished the file again to gravel travel. I replace the dataset. I go back to my book 3 now. There it has this connection to, here it said success. I have this connection to Power BI. I hit refresh and see things have changed. There was some group above that that's gone now. So what happens, you have with Excel, with Analyze in Excel, you have a live connection to your Power BI service, to your data set, and with your permissions that you have. So if you have enabled row level security, for example, or if you have a data set that only certain people are allowed to access, then all this gets into consideration. Let's close some of these files. So this is another way. So you now have the old way to get to your data without having to use a Power BI report. But this was too easy, I think. Usually when you do this, analyzing in Excel, you get a prompt. Because first, one thing that you have to do is you need to download Analyze in Excel updates. This is an OLEDB driver for the MS OLAP, so the newest SQL server that allows you to access Power BI analysis services. With the standard MS OLAP driver, this is not possible. Yeah, you have to keep that in mind. So you have to install this update. Maybe you don't need, because in my case, I think it worked right away. I've set up this machine 2 months ago, and I think it worked right away. I installed that update, but on older versions of Excel, you might need that. And one other thing I had quite often, I had trouble when I installed Analyze in Excel update, so it didn't get the connection right. I always get some errors. With the PowerPoint slides, I will put a link into that error that I had usually. It was called with had something to do with a DLL file I had to replace all the time, and then it worked fine. Excel now on my machine has connected properly, and it also logged in properly. So it uses my Office 365 credentials to log in. And on my machine, I'm logged in with an Azure AD user by myself, and the machine is part of an Azure AD domain, so I'm logged in right away without even that it asked to connect. So we now have our report. It works, so I can take numbers into my tables. It's very poor, I must admit, but I should be able to do the same thing in Excel. So I take the target group into my rows, Gruppen, Sommer, German again. And now I want to take the total sales amount into the values, and you see it doesn't work. Because what is missing in this model here are the measures. If you compare this to the data model, the Power BI desktop file, we don't have any explicit measures here. You see this, we have these sum signs, we have some date fields, and no explicit measures. And Power Analyze in Excel needs explicit measures in order to work, because what Excel creates in the end is have some pivot table extensions here, just to open up it creates an MDX statement. Yeah, so an MDX query, and to send it to the server, and it needs, in this case, measures to work properly. What also, you can imagine that it's not working properly because Excel by itself it doesn't have the data, so it is not able to sum the data, for example. Well, the Power BI service and this analysis services, it has the data, and the language and the communication is differently. Here it's going through DAX, and from Excel it's communicating with MDX, so it's with the multi-dimensional cube. So it's a different way. So this is why you don't see the any intrinsic measures. Let's create one. Let's take this total sales amount. I create a new measure. Let's give it a name. Total sales. I have to write a sum of this column. So total sales amount. This is not very nice, but you have to do it. So it's not created for you. So it's the total sales. I go to the modeling tab, give it some format, decimal number. Nobody needs decimals. Oh, that's our total sales. Save. It says it's working on it. Publish. Gravel, travel, select. And we should be able to see it in a blink. Got it. Let's hit refresh. Oh, there it is. Now you see there's the dimension tables. Let's call them dimension tables, travel bookings and destinations. And there's the total sales. It has a different sign. This is called a measure group. It's inside the measure groups, travel bookings. Here it's two different things. In Power BI, it's the same. It shows up in the same table. Now we have the target group. We can take the total sales, put them in here. It's perfectly fine. Now it also gives me the formatting that I chose in the modeling, and I create a new measure for the PAX. And somebody who has not been working with tourism, PAX is the number of people traveling. New measure. Still working on it. So it's called total PAX. Let's call it like this. So we have two. This is also a sum. Total PAX. Great. Modeling. Whole number, just put some 1,000 separator. So it's the first thing you have to keep in mind when you create a data model to use with Excel. You need to create these measures. Second thing, let's take the booking date. I don't publish now. Let's do it later. Let's take the booking date. I want to have the total sales split up by booking date. So I take the booking date in rows, and you get this. With regular pivot tables, you get the option to group and ungrouped, but this is not possible here because these fields are just considered to be values, text, labels. So Excel doesn't know that it's a date field. That doesn't care. You cannot even insert a timeline here because it says it doesn't have a value, a field formatted as date. In Power BI, we have a date hierarchy here. What you see in Power. In Excel, you always have the empty data table here. So in order to make any use of this, you need to create columns, for example, to express the grouping, or you create a calendar table. Let's just call it travel year. So it's the year of the travel date. Travel date is T. Travel date. Perfect. Let's make it easy. Whole travel year is in there already. Let's take travel month. This is also very, very useful. So months. You could do it while loading the data model in the query. I do it now as a calculated column, as this is a calculated column. Perfect. Save the file. So now it's the grouping problem that you have. They have the date problem because it's not the date tables that are created by Power BI are not recognized here, and you cannot access them here. And now I think is a good point to enter some calendar, because here you see I've copied from my Power BI a calendar. I create a new query, blank query, just copy in my calendar. Well, this is a good way, so you can just copy queries from one file to the other, just over the clipboard, advanced editor. It's very slow, I'm sorry. So booking calendar. Let's call it booking cal. It's all right. Close and apply, and it generates a calendar just by executing a Power Query script. Now, oh, this takes very long time. Booking date. I'll save, publish, and then so sometimes you need to overcome some of these problems that we have with these tables in Excel. Let's refresh it. So now we stay in Excel. We don't leave it. So we have the two numbers here, our two measures. We have destination name, Cameroon, Ghana, Ivory Coast. And now we have all the options that you know from Excel to build a report. What I always used to insert some blank columns. Now we call it travel report. Gravel, travel, gravel, travel. Let's make it like this. What we should have in our travel report is a selection for the season. So basically the year that people travel in. You know that with pivot tables, you can use a filter, travel year, for example. So now you have the option to choose a year, 14, 15. That's all right. It's easy to use. One of the more interesting, so graphically more interesting ways is to insert a slicer. So it's the same, basically the same thing as a filter. Here you have the travel year, say okay. The slicer here. Let's have it a little broader. And you can choose this, and you see this is linked to the filter, and you can remove the filter now. It's the same thing as filtering the table. One of the good, to my view, the very good things about the slicer is that you can access the elements that are in the slicer. So slicer, you see this slicer travel year. If you write it like this, just hit enter. Yeah, it just gives you nothing. Yeah, why is that? We come to this in a second, but there's a way to enter to access the slicer. This is because this is a set. So this is basically a set of values. It's not a single value, but it's a set of values. In Excel, you have formulas to access data from the cube. Is like this. And these formulas are called cube formulas. We'll make use of them in a second. The first thing that you can do with slicers is, because I like them so much, because you can have a second pivot table, and this pivot table can also be linked to this slicer. So you can have, if you build a report like this, now that you are not based on a default standard Excel pivot table, you can create a report connection to both pivot tables. So this is very neat, and so you can focus on the packs, for example, here, on the sales on the left. So this is very, very nice. Now, what I would like to know here is, what are the sales per packs? So the sales per person. In Power BI Desktop, I could go and create a measure, a custom measure in my report if I don't have access to the data model. What I can do in Excel, in the OLAP tools section, you find MDX calculated measures. And there you can create, like in Power BI, your own measure, like sales per packs, call it this way. So it's just total sales divided by total packs. You see the writing is differently. The writing is quite different than in Power BI because this is MDX and not DEX. I just tested it. It's okay. Okay. And now we get a new measure up here that we can use in our report. It's sales per tax. I can just drop it into my table here, give it a little formatting. So what you see, you get all the measures from your Excel, and from your Power BI model. You get the measures from your Excel table, and you have all this in your report. Now let's assume you just want to have this number somewhere. So just somebody requires you to put a big block, total sales on the upper right, like this. With Excel, what you have here is a number of functions. One function is called cube value, for example. The first parameter of this function is the connection. There's just one. So just basically hit the semicolon, and then you just write it like this. You just semicolon, then measures dot total sales. See? So what you get is from this connection, the total sales. No other filters applied. Just hit enter and it writes the total sales in the upper cell. It's just like this. You can go even further and apply a filter. And one filter we have in our report, it's the slicer. And now you see this slicer travel year. You can just put the slicer as another parameter here. Just hit enter. And then you have the data from your Power BI data set in here. It's kind of great. So you're very flexible to build reports like this here in Excel. If you want to go any further with that, you can take a table that looks like this and convert it into formulas. Do it like this. Maybe you get a warning. In this case, you may not get a warning. And there you see all the cube value functions with the slicers applied, how this is built up. So this is quite a good way to get into the cube value functions and just to figure out ways to make use of them. This is the cube value functions, and they allow you to build quite interesting and flexible reports. So let's save this thing. We have learned quite at the beginning how good it would be if we, or how that it is possible to import Excel files and reports and good-looking reports into our Power BI environment. So just imagine you create a travel report. Let's call it travel report Excel in here. And just imagine you could upload the report to your Power BI to have it show up here as a workbook. So you say you take your Excel report that has a live connection to your Power BI and put it in here as a workbook and to have it access your Power BI dataset. But this is not possible right now. Yeah, this could be a possible way. So you create your report as you want them, like on a cell level in Excel, upload them to your Power BI data, to a Power BI app workspace, but it's not possible to refresh the data here. It's just not possible. But one thing that is quite possible, what I like to do is when you have a report that gives you additional insight like this, just create a very simple, straightforward report. What you can always do is save the report as a template. So just hit Save As, Excel template. Just put it to my desktop, travel report template. Save. Yeah. Now it will even ask me if it should clear any external data. I'll just hit yes in this case. Here's the template. You remember the group workspace, so the app workspace Gravel Travel Limited documents. So I do try. Yeah, I put the document into my group workspace. And what you can now do is you can, in your report, you can put a link. I just go to the end. We've covered all that. So yeah, like this, you put the template in your folder, put a link into your report, a link to your template. So it gives the user the ability to open the Excel file. The template will open, it is linked to your data set, and the user gets a pre-formatted report. It is a little better than Analyze in Excel, so the user does not have to set all the filters and all the details by himself. So the user, if you make use of a template, has a good starting point for his report and not a blank Analyze in Excel report. So with all the technical trouble that I had because my computer was so slow and I was a little back with the time, I hope you could pick some interesting points from today. Thank you for your time that you joined this session, and I would like to invite you to keep in touch. So have a great evening, and I say thank you. Do you have any questions?
So you had one question in between. I answered it for you. The question was, where does our dataset reside in Power BI service? In Azure Analysis Services or somewhere else? I replied with, it's just sitting in the Power BI service if you upload it regularly. You might want to correct me on that, or you might want to agree on it.
I would agree. So it's not an Azure Analysis Service that you can access like if it's your own.
Yeah, indeed. The analysis services is a completely separate service that you have to set up and actually learn to work with. Even though Power BI and Power Pivot are basically Azure Analysis Services tabular. It's all tabular models in the end. So if you really want to make it very simplified, that's the simplification I always make. That's why they work together so well.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed your session. It was nice to see somebody actually work with Excel, because usually it's Excel gets looked down upon. So I assume you do this daily for your job?
Yeah, I do that daily because I have many clients where I build tools with data models actually. So let's say we import data from SAP and want to build a good spreadsheet where we build a report, and then I used to use data models and cube formulas actually a lot because it is far more. These functions are far more performant than like if you use SUMIF or something, or if you put all the data into a big table. It's always better to have a data model in the back. So I use them quite a lot because not all customers have analysis services there, and you get quite good results quite quick.
Yeah. Okay. So if people have any questions, they can just mail or tweet you, I suppose.
Yeah, sure.
Great. Well, thank you for doing this. It's always nice to have new speakers here as well. You're not the only one today who was new. So
Okay.
I hope it
Thank
was a
you.
great experience for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, see you later then.
See you. Thank you.
Bye.
And goodbye.
You.